Okay, awesome. So, hi everyone. Thank you for coming. So this session is about Slack, and we're also going to talk about a different or another online communication platform, Discord, and kind of give like a pros and cons of both, and then have a discussion, and then pick which one seems more suitable for all of the work that we want to do online. Or online communication platform is a better way to say that. So, oh my gosh, where's my, here we go. Okay, cool, Slack versus Discord. Oh my gosh. So the goals of this session, we want to increase communication between the board and team, board and members, team and team, team and members, members and members, and the US and non-US. So, little agenda. First, we're going to learn about both platforms, how to navigate them, and then we'll do an open discussion, and then pick a new primary platform of communication, or at least take a vote on which one seems more suitable. So first, email. Historically, we've always used email as a primary platform of communication, and it's great for communication with, donors, community partners, things like that, or individuals. It's not super great for collaborative projects and planning, discussions, and then community engagement. And community engagement, what I mean by that is kind of the interpersonal like relationships between other SSD peers and, bonding, things like that. So first we're going to talk about Slack, and SSDP already has a Slack. I feel like it's not used to its full potential. So yeah, we're going to talk about it. So first, these are just like the basics of Slack. There's channels, and there's two types of channels: public channels, which are open to everyone, and they have a hashtag icon next to the name, and then private channels have a lock icon next to the name. And I just kind of linked in this video. It's super short. It's from Slack. That kind of shows everything. So
like Slack is where work happens. And when you work in Slack, that work happens in channels. While email can be great for many things, it's often difficult to keep your team on track and projects moving forward. Juggling endless email chains and remembering to CC the right people is just the start of it. With channels, you can assemble the right people in one space and organize around a common goal, whether that's a project, topic, or team. When you need to get the group's attention, you can easily notify them, get aligned, and move on to the next task. Channels aren't confined to working with just people at your organization. You can also create shared channels to work with external partners, clients, and vendors. So no matter who you're working with, everyone's in the loop and on the same page. All the messages and files in a channel are saved and searchable. You can quickly find conversations from any channel within your company. You'll spend less time tracking down people to answer questions and more time getting work done. Discover a whole new way of working with channels in Slack.
Yay for fun little videos. So yeah. So there's also direct messages. When to use direct messages for time-sensitive individual questions or like group questions. And they're best for like quick discussions, and they're only visible and searchable by you and any other members of the direct message, and they can be a one-on-one or a group of up to 8 people. So notifications, you can choose to receive notifications on your desktop, mobile device, or by email. Slack also has an app. And you can prioritize where your attention goes, by customizing notifications for each channel. Message threads. So this is a really great way to kind of go back to conversations that were started. So there'll be like a little option that will say threads. So And you can see any threads that you've participated in and keep up to date with that. And you can start like side conversations, and it doesn't blow up the whole channel, and then you have to scroll through and search for something, or yeah, it's a great way to keep everything organized. So the search feature is also really awesome. If you can't find something, there's a little search box, and that will find that'll search through DMs, channels, threads, everything. And then additional key features of Slack, pinned messages and files. So you can pin an important message or a file to a channel that everyone in the channel can see easily. So it's kind of like pinning a post on Facebook. And then star messages are similar to pinned messages, but they're personal bookmarks that only you can view. And then you can set reminders so that you never fall behind on your work. And you can also set your status. So the status is like a message that lets people know what you're up to. And then availability is the little dot that shows up next to your name, and it'll indicate if you're active or not. And then another awesome feature of Slack is the app directory. And so you can connect like different apps like G Suite, so like Google Docs, Drive, everything, Doodle Poll. You can also connect to like Twitter. There's a whole Slack app directory, and I didn't want to list all of them because that would be like 1,500 slides. But that is like a really cool feature of Slack that Discord doesn't offer. But yeah. So the other thing about Slack is that there is a free version that provides all the basic features. But then there are also 3 pricing plans. There's the standard version, the plus version, and the enterprise grid. I'm fairly certain that we just have the free version. And but yeah, if we were gonna transition to using Slack as our primary form of communication, we may consider using the standard plan. And I didn't want to write out all of the other features of the other 2 because some of them didn't make sense to me because they were using acronyms like SLA, and maybe I should know what that is, but I don't. But yeah, because I know for the free version, there's a limited number of messages and limited number of apps that you can use. And you can't necessarily do group video calls or screen share with the free version. And yeah, you can work securely with other organizations using Slack Connect.
Kat, can I just clarify? The free version lets you message unlimited. You can message unlimited, but it doesn't archive unlimited. So it'll stop archiving at a certain point.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I know that there's been concerns in the past that, especially with board-to-board communication, that feature would somehow, make us uncompliant with our legal obligations to keep board records. But I don't, there's always, you can always, if you're having an important conversation, like in that moment that you think should be saved, you can always save it at that point, because it's like a timeline. It doesn't save back to a certain point. And so, and I also think that official board business, if we have to vote on anything, should still be done via email. But everything else, real life, just discussions and stuff don't necessarily have to be archived. It's really just the board minutes that we need to keep. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, thank you, Maddie.
Yeah, to add to what Maddie said, board committees, their meeting minutes don't need to be recorded because they just make recommendations to the board. And so because of that, when we get audited, we don't need to provide committee meeting minutes, because committees just make recommendations. They don't make decisions. And so board committees can communicate through Slack.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. That's actually a big reason why I have been advocating for centralized board communications at minimum, is because I feel like it would be a really great way for the whole board to see like what the committees are up to by just popping into each committee channel and seeing the discussions that are happening there.
Also, I just realized that no one could see the video. My bad. Sorry about that. But yeah, it's I can link it if you're really interested. Um, but yeah, so now we'll move on to talking about Discord. So Discord is very similar to Slack, and it was initially created for gamers. So there's a lot of like, it is made for streaming, and there's just a couple different features. So you have unlimited messages, and text to speech notifications, as well as voice channels, which is something that Slack doesn't offer. So a voice channel is a channel you can hop on, and it's kind of just like starting a call. Um, and you can also do screen sharing, and Discord is completely free. There is like an upgraded version, but it's more for like creating avatars and things like that. So the reason I brought up Discord is because my chapter uses Discord as our primary communication platform. Um, and yeah, it's just a little bit different, but it's still awesome. Um, and I have pros and cons of both. Sorry, again, I started making this presentation this morning because my other one I could not access. So the pros of Slack, you can have 8,500 people per channel, which is a lot. It's more business oriented than Discord is. There's more chat features, integration, and admin control. And it organizes chats by channel. And there is a like Slack app directory. The cons, if we were going to upgrade, it would cost some money. And there's no screen sharing on the web version. Discord is completely free. There is a gaming option, which could be fun for like, I don't know, a SSDP Global Among Us game or something like that. So Discord's like a little, I think it's a better platform for actually, doing fun things that aren't necessarily business oriented. But it has the same basic features as Slack. The cons, there's only 5,000 people per channel, and it organizes chats by text or voice as opposed to by channels. So yeah, but you can still have locked like private channels and public channels. And then there's also no threads in Discord, so you don't have that easy option of like, oh, I responded to this and I want to check in on it. But yeah. And then Maddie and I came up with some channel ideas. I know that we already have a lot of channels in the Slack that we have. That's another pro. We already have a Slack. We would have to make a Discord. But these are some of the channel ideas that we came up with. So committee channels, a board channel, team channel, staff channel, global team channel, fundraising channel, meme channel. That's always like a big one with my chapter. Jobs and opportunities, which we already have. Just say no, which we already have. A psychedelic pipeline channel, regional or state chapter channels, and then a chapter leaders channel, and then social channels, which could be like books, podcasts, things like that, just to communicate with each other. And the other thing is that like this is going to be much easier to communicate like globally as opposed to just relying on email with time zones and everything. But Slack and Discord is available everywhere in the world, which is awesome. And then those are my references. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Yeah. Also, sorry, my initial presentation was way better. Maybe we can link it once I can access it to the page, the Strategy Summit website, if anyone wants to look over and get more information. But yeah, now I just wanted to discuss and kind of see what everyone was thinking about either platform. And then, yeah.
Yeah, I like that we have a couple options here. I didn't realize that Discord, that you couldn't organize your discussions by channel, and that Discord doesn't have threads. Because I think it's really, the thread feature specifically, I think is really important, because if the thread feature is like, you can post something, and we do this within Dance Safe, like we'll post something that requires discussion, and then we'll say, please discuss in a thread of this message, just for a reminder, even though it's become habit for most people. And the thread, and then we have the discussion within the thread, and that makes it really, one, it doesn't inundate the channel with messages. Two, it makes it really easy. You can like pin that message, or just like you can search that message and go back. And DanceSafe uses the free version of Slack. We've never had to, and we use it for our chapters too. So I feel like the free version is sufficient, honestly. And I've never had an issue where I have gone to search for a discussion like in the past that I haven't been able to find. And I'm not saying that that won't happen, but so anyways, I think that like the thread feature is really, really important to keep things organized and efficient, to make it so it's less overwhelming if people are continuously receiving like back and forth, like an old, like a 90s chat room style. So I think that that's really important. And I also think the feature of being able to name our channels is really important as well. So my vote would be for Slack, even though I do see the pros of like the more social aspect through Discord. But because of how large our network is, I think Slack might be more useful. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I do want to clarify, you can still name channels in Discord. It's just they're not necessarily here. Well, I guess, can I just like share my screen and show my chapter's Discord? Is that cool?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the reason that we got a Discord is because I had like 5 Slack, like, I don't know what they're called. What are they called? 5 Slack servers, I guess. And yeah, it was a lot. And so I was like, I don't want to add another one. But this is my chapters. Well, so I use it for my chapter and then also my job with Psych Sems. So yeah, so you can have like announcements, and then this is where new people show up. For eBoard, these are the locked channels that we have. We have our eBoard chat, our fundraising, and then these are all of our other like channels that we have. We have general, games, social, memes and music, questions, politics, suggestions, pets of SSDP, of course, current event suggestions, Among Us, spirituality and philosophy discussion. There we go. Jobs and opportunities, and our expungement clinic. And then we also have a couple, I guess we only have these voice channels down here. But we have an Among Us voice channel, and then a President's voice channel, eBoard, and fundraising. But yeah, so it's pretty similar in terms of like how you can use it, except obviously the thread feature in Slack is a great way to stay organized. But yeah, you can post links and like things, and you can put music in and memes and pictures and everything like that. So this is my chapter's Discord. But yeah, so while I was researching this, I did see the pros of Slack as probably more suitable for our organization, and kind of came up with another idea that we could just create a Discord channel that's strictly for like gaming together and things like that. So we could still get that, bonding type connection with other SSD peers. And it would be really cool to, play games with people all over the world. So we might not need to pick just one, but what are people's thoughts on that?
I vote for not picking between the two. I think that there is, so like what I would like to do is just kind of reframe the question a little bit, because I do think that there are benefits and there is to each of them. I think for quite a number of people in our network, it just comes down to preference, really. Some like people are already using Discord, people are already using Slack, and the one that they use the most tends to be whatever they want, really. So I guess like my question is like, if we were to invest this time and energy of the board, of staff members, of members of the network even, into Slack or Discord or both, like what is it that we are trying to, I guess, like, are we trying to structure Slack in a way that drives attention to it? Because as you said, we have one. It was used during the conference time, but since then the engagement has dwindled. Like what are the things, I guess, that for each of these that we need to be considering as far as if we're going to implement them, what is it going to take in order to make them used, like actually, functional and structured in a way that people will want to engage with it? Does that make sense as a reframing?
Yeah, I for me specifically, because I'm the one that actually proposed this session. Well, one, I think that like I totally understand your question. It would take full buy-in from the organization to make this work. And so that means all board members and all staff members at minimum, I think. For me, I just felt like I came onto the board, and I've never worked on a board before where there was like committees. And so, and technically the committees are like doing the work of the like all board members have the right to know what committees are doing at any given time. And for me, it made sense that at minimum to have a centralized communication for the board to create more transparency and to like cultivate more of to communicate more or to cultivate more connectedness like within at minimum the board. So I envisioned having like a centralized communications where we had every like a channel for each committee, and then in that committee like all the board members would be in that committee channel. And so we could pop in and so that means we'd have to have all the board buy-in to be like, hey, y'all, for the committees, like let's start using Slack. Let's put our discussions there. So that way all the board members at any given time can pop in there and see like what the committees are working on. And that would include like staff too. So staff can come in, like I can communicate with the governance and administration committee in there. I could be like, at channel, like here's the link to the next doodle. It just, I don't know, for me, it just seems like I've noticed that when we moved away from email and centralized our communications within DanceSafe, it cultivated a more of a just like with a remote team, it just it cultivated I feel like I'm working with my coworkers, or like if I'm at the board, because we can engage in like real life discussions and stuff like that. So for me, it's like about transparency and about centralizing communications, so that people feel like they're not just like having a discussion in a vacuum, which is like an email chain. So I don't think that answers your question, but I know that part of your question is like, yeah, we have to have buy-in from everyone. And I don't know how difficult that would be. It also, we've gotten feedback from we've started including our chapter officers in Slack. which has given them an ability to like communicate with staff directly and communicate with board directly in the appropriate channels. And that we've received feedback from our members that has made them feel a lot more connected to like the organization. And so for SSDP, I would hope that it would make the members feel the same, that they have some more of a connection to the, like SSDP Global, like headquarters, you know. So yeah.
Thank you, Maddie. I did want to bring attention to a couple of things here in the chat real quickly. Evan Hazlett shared that he thinks that creating more channels for committees is a really good idea because I'm not even on the board and I get lost in SSDP emails. Thank you for that feedback.
Yeah, can I elaborate on that real quick?
Oh, you're on here. Okay, never mind. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I really like the idea of making different channels for the committees. I think that we'll never be able to steer away completely from email or any of social medias. After kind of going through the survey, one of the like things that made me really proud about all these survey responses is apparently we are really good at communicating. And apparently people notice that, and people notice that we're on multiple different platforms and that we are accessible to kind of wherever they want to find out the information. But I do think creating different channels and pushing board members to use Slack will cultivate a like sense of community within Slack. And I think that, you know, there can be many things said about the trickle down effect, but I think it actually would trickle down to different levels of membership within SSDP, because if board members are using that, if through ICC and intersectionality, people are, you know, every meeting where go check the Slack channel. Like if we're not going to be sending a ton of emails with updates, like check the Slack channel. We'll be talking about this stuff consistently. I think it can really cultivate, that sense of community, and I think get people to use it more often because, you know, we don't have like, at least to mine, there probably is a Facebook group for both of these committees, but like, I don't think we should use the Facebook groups.
Yeah, and
No, go ahead, Kat.
yeah, and just to add on to what both Maddie and Evan said, like not only can board members see what committees are doing, like what both committee or not both, all committees are doing, but members of the network can see what the committees are doing, and that might increase engagement. Even if it's not necessarily going to every committee meeting, but you can hop on Slack and be like, oh, ICC is creating these resources. I want to help with that. Or intersectionality committee is doing this book club. I want to join that. And just like, I think it's a great, we need to transition for more transparency, like Maddie said. And yeah, it's just a better way to stay organized so we're not all getting lost in emails. And I think it's a better way for members of our network to actually engage in the work that we're doing. And there's very little, if any, communication directly between the board and members of our network. I know that when I first joined SSDP and when I first even ran for the board, I was like, what the hell is the board? So to kind of, you know, we're elected officials from members of our network, and they should be able to see like what's going on, and we should be able to have a direct line of communication with them. And if they have questions or ideas or things like that, it's a lot easier than sending an email just directly to the board and then having it get lost. So
Hey, yeah, so I just have a question here. Like, are we making a new Slack, or are we just using the one that we currently have? Because like, I think that like just migrating to a new Slack would be a pain when we already have like people on this, and there's like currently there is like an ICC chapter collaborative committee channel, there's an intersectionality committee channel, there's a fundraising channel, there's like there's also a team and board channel and a team channel. I don't know if there's a board channel. If there is, I'm not in it. But yeah, like we already have this set up. So yeah, I guess that's my question. I would prefer to continue using this one.
yeah, I think that we would continue to use the one that we already have, because why reinvent the wheel? But we can definitely improve it. add more channels. And, you know, I think also something that would be beneficial is that I know that like there's a, within like the little SSDP orientation thing that Luis has created for like new chapters and things like that. We can also have a Slack training that, you know, like I would volunteer to make that. If anyone wanted to help, that's awesome. But yeah, just that's kind of like, okay, like this is Slack, like this is what we use it for, this is how you use it. And yeah, just kind of like an even more in-depth little like presentation about like, I think that would help with buy-in as well. Because when I first started using Slack, I was like, this is really confusing. It really doesn't make a lot of sense. And then um, I had a job that used Slack as the primary form of communication. And I was like, oh, wow, like this is actually really helpful. So I think just like there needs to be a little bit of education on how to use it. Um, but yeah, I think that'll help with buy-in and overall like use of our Slack. But yeah, I don't think we need to make a new one, um, but just kind of to update it and improve it.
I support that. One thing that I wanted to um, say, so we've been talking about Slack and like the ways to cultivate that space. A couple of things. I'm in support of a user manual. I think that that would be really, really helpful. As far as integrating that into some sort of training or as part of the orientation, we are intending on expanding the orientation into just like intro to SSDP training or like how to be an SSDP or kind of training. And as part of that, what we can do is integrate activities through Slack to have people kind of engage through that. For example, like in the way that you have that Discord for welcome and introductions, we can also have that where we send everyone or we spend like 30 minutes after the orientation in one of those channels, sort of creating the space, and we invite the network to participate in that. So, you know, we can get pretty creative. I guess like we have been focusing a lot on Slack, and I'm totally fine with that. I think that's like a functional conversation. As far as like rolling out Discord, if we were to use it, I really like your idea of games, and that's just because I'm a gamer, like, to be honest. And so I'm thinking like as far as getting Discord a bit more active, as far as like an official SSDP thing, I think so long as we're coming up with things like games and other sort of actionable events, things that are fun, and we promote it through through Discord, sorry, we don't have to do this intentional. It is still intentional, but it's not like we don't have to mobilize the entire board in order to start getting people to engage there, especially because it would be, you know, purely for a social thing, and we would just have to consider how do we create a structure so that it's sustainable. Just some thoughts there. Yeah.
I just wanted to know, we have a huge opportunity with Sensible 2021. I think a lot of people really enjoyed that we used Slack for the virtual conference back in earlier 2020. And so we do have that opportunity in March again. And I think we can, if we have some of these guidelines and, you know, a better sense of alignment, well, I think we all are pretty in alignment. But like a good sense of all of the how we're going to communicate about Slack. We just have a really big opportunity to increase buy-in during that because it's something where there's active conversations happening throughout the weekend. So we can be like, use Slack, use Slack, use Slack. And then people like join it and they're like, oh, this is actually kind of cool. And then, you know, normally after the conference, it falls off a little bit. But yeah, just wanted to note we have that opportunity in March.
Yeah, as far as like when we make the transition, like when we really start to push for Slack, I think we could even do it like after the new year, kind of like as like a New Year's resolution for SSDP. And you know, we could send out an email blast, and it would just take a lot of it would take a lot of work in terms of promoting it and obviously buy-in from everyone, like we said. But
I do want to note, Kat, I don't know if we would have to do that much like promotion, I guess. Just because I think we've been pretty clear, like, yo, join Slack. Like, I feel like we've kind of already made that transition. And so I think now to kind of bring back to Maddie's point, centralizing like the team and board communications on Slack is, I think, kind of what we're looking to transition now, which maybe could be involved in. I've been talking to Julia about creating some sort of like board member training where like it's kind of like, oh, I got elected to the board. What the heck does this mean?
Yeah.
And so I think we can definitely include a kind of aspect of Slack in that. And so when we have some new board members in March as well, it can kind of be like, the test run, like, okay, let's get these people like, yo, we use Slack. And so they come in and they're like, oh, okay, Slack is what we use. And then maybe we can see how, in a month or so, have they been using it? Like we trained them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really, really good idea. And I'm in agreement with you, but I do want to say like in order to like fully like to utilize every aspect of Slack and make it the best that it can be for communication, like I don't want to say none, but very few of my chapter members use the SSDP family Slack. So I do think like I don't think it would take a ton of promotion, but I think like in like one email blast that's like, hey, like we are transitioning like all like to Slack as our primary form of communication. Like if you haven't joined the SSDP family Slack, here's how you can. Just like just as kind of like a reminder, because I think it would be beneficial to have like obviously team and board communication is going to be way easier, but I do think that if we say, and I'm sure this will probably come up after the regional autonomy session tomorrow, but in terms of regional and state committees, like that's going to be a great resource for that to communicate with other SSD peers in your state or region and collaborate on things like that. So I think that at least like one like email blast, social media post like that would be just as kind of like a friendly little nudge. So, but I really do like the idea of uh, in the board member training, which is also a phenomenal idea. To have like to not even really, I mean, obviously we talk about email a little bit, but just to, make it known that we use Slack. So join, please.
I have a question about Slack, if that's okay. Cool. Is it, I think it is, but is it the same amount of accessible as Gmail is as far as folks having it on their phones or computers, like countries that don't have as much internet access, things like that? Like, are we still in the clear as far as like including everyone? I don't
Yeah.
know if a staff member might know that.
Yeah, so from what I could find, like Slack is available worldwide. And there is obviously like a desktop version, a computer like app, and then a mobile app as well. So yeah, I guess like I'm just a little, could you clarify like what, or Maddie, do you have an answer to this?
I was just going to say that Clement is on here with us, and I'm wondering if he's had any experience with Slack and how accessible it's been in other countries.
Yeah, so a little bit of my experience with Slack. I've not really gotten so accustomed to it. I think the version I had was an app version, which I was able to phone. However, Slack is not, from a little bit of experience, Slack is not something which is so familiar with like folks from my end. I'm speaking in terms of like Africa. I got really the sensible 22 to navigate myself through, and comparing it with email like Gmail, I feel Gmail is more accessible for folks, though sometimes like you get lost trying to navigate Gmail thread when you have to like talk about something, and comparing it to the Slack, Slack is a bit more of like well organized, because you get to know of what is happening, and you get to like scroll up or scroll down more easily, So yeah, I don't know whether I'm answering the question, but a little bit of what I want to say is that probably it would bounce back to the educational aspect, that once we kind of like educate folks about, Slack, create the awareness, and like kind of like have a simple orientation, so that it doesn't look like one of those difficult technological, things that one has to go through, and we make it more simpler and try to get people to understand why choose Slack over Gmail in terms of usage for board members, or chapters or committees. Like, I think that would be more easily for people to have the interest to sign up to using Slack, and it would increase the acceptability, and also folks coming on board. So yeah, more awareness, more education on Slack over Gmail.
Thanks, Clement. That's super helpful to know.
So this might be a your conversation, and I just want to note that for time, but I think if we're trying to move to using or utilizing the channels more, I do think we should continue this conversation about deleting some of the Facebook groups, because there are so many. And I think if we are developing like regional structures, it's going to be kind of weird to have like SSDP like Pacific, and then we have like a Slack channels that's the same thing. And then I know it just requires a lot of capacity to post in like all of those different regions. I see Luis and Rob posting, and other staff members all the time, like in all the Facebook groups. And so to post in all of those, as well as Slack, and trying to cover like all of the bases can be difficult. So I just think we might have to look to, actually getting rid of some of those Facebook groups, which can also be beneficial to kind of sorting out active members as well.
I see your point. I don't think we necessarily need to delete Facebook groups just because like they've been around for I don't even know how long. And I'm sure that there's like conversations that have taken place in there that are, that have valuable information. So I don't think we necessarily need to delete them, but kind of transition out of using them, post in them and say, okay, like we're transitioning to Slack now, like we're not really going to use this group anymore. But yeah, it would suck if there was like some really valuable information that was in, or conversations that took place in a Facebook group, and then we deleted it, and then it was like, oh well, we talked about this here, but now we can't access it. So, but I do think that kind of not using those Facebook groups anymore. But yeah, and just like posting and saying like, hey, we're gonna use Slack now. But yeah, I see your point with that.
The SSDP team is already working on that. I don't know if it's like deleting it or suspending it, but we are going to be transitioning out of using so many Facebook groups. Probably have like a handful of Facebook groups that are still active, just because that is still a platform that a lot of people are.
You muted yourself at the end, Luis.
Thanks for that. What's it called? We're not. There are still some groups that are pretty active that we might like channel people to from like these other groups. But yeah, like I think that so long as we're intentional about using Slack and then directing people to that. One idea that I had earlier in the summer for social media engagement was a weekly like AMA kind of thing with the board and team, or again with like the SSDP orientations as sort of like welcome period. Those are all things that we can consider, but well, yeah, sorry, that was just a couple times.
Yeah, I also want to bring to attention what Trixie said in the chat. To add on to what Clement said and kind of related to Ev's point, I think also the difficulty in terms of accessibility for folks with limited internet is that we shouldn't duplicate communications and or use too many different platforms and apps, as that's more data and phone storage. So yeah, that's a great point, and I agree. Cool. Well, we are approaching the end of the time limit, I guess. Does anyone have anything else? Are we all kind of in agreement that we're gonna commit to using Slack? Yeah.
So as far as like making sure that this doesn't just end with this conversation, one thing that I know, Kat, it was sort of arbitrary, but you had talked about like possibly doing this around New Year, where it's a lot more intentional of a push. If we were to use that deadline, we would need to start communicating with committee leaders and beginning to not only create like a set of expectations around what communications can look like, but also take the time to actually work with those committees to make sure that those expectations are not unreasonable. Like one thing that comes to mind is that we could possibly have committees commit to posting a few days before their meeting in the Slack channel that they operate, as well as posting afterwards to share the agenda with people that maybe didn't attend. If there's any sort of activity or whatever, they could use their Slack channel as a centralized chat function of sorts. But those are just examples of expectations. I think we should continue this conversation and generate a set list of these are expectations that we generally have, and then work with each committee to make sure that, again, those expectations are not only reasonable for them, but would also actually benefit them in terms of raising awareness about their events, gaining membership, and everything else that committees need to do.
Yeah, I agree, and I am more than happy to work on that over winter break, and if anyone else is interested, let me know. And yeah, hopefully we can, roll into the new year with everything in place. And yeah, new year, new SSTP.
I do think too, this will be a large conversation for in developing like our multi-year plan, because kind of shifting communications, we'll have a conversation later on about an app. So I think like our communications is a large conversation that will definitely be continuing with like the multi-year planning effort and the multi-year plan. And then I don't want to speak ahead of myself, but me and Julia have long talked about the board training or whatever. So I know that we'll have some sort of like training thing for new board members by the conference. And then, like I said, March, we can do a really big push with Sensible 2021. This is where we are projecting all of our communications.
Yeah, just a shout out to anyone who's like on the board and interested. The board training will most likely be getting developed by Congress committee in the coming months before Congress. So if any of you would like to hop in on that project, you're more than welcome.
On the note of continuing this conversation, also there is a digital communications session tomorrow that is public. Participants should have received their invites by now. If you were invited, please to attend, and that's going to be led by Rachel and I believe Kat Murdy. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for coming. And yeah, I think this was productive, and I'm really